This is the first episode in a 6-part series. There will be 2 episodes covering this case, the murder of Travis Smith, and then 2 episodes covering the disappearance of Sonia Tukes, and then the final 2 episodes covering the murder of Susie Quinn. This series discusses crime scenes, violence, autopsy, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. In order to raise money for the nonprofit Season of Justice, we're joining forces with our friends from Moms and Mysteries for the next month. We have a combined goal to raise $3,500 for the Season of Justice Family Grants Initiative. You can learn how to help support this campaign at the end of the episode. This is the Fall Line. This season, we're bringing you 3 unsolved cases from Georgia and South Carolina. The earliest dates back to the mid-1980s. The most recent is nearly 11 years cold. North Augusta, Tennille, Oglethorpe, that's where we fall on the map, with stories of 2 murders and a missing persons case. All are waiting for that final piece to fall into place. For each case, the murder of Travis Smith in North Augusta, of Susie Quinn, who lived in Macon and Oglethorpe, and in the disappearance of Sonia Tukes, who spent her whole life in tiny Tennille. Your part in this will be key. Sharing these episodes and the accompanying flyers we've posted on our website and social media, and sharing them nationwide might just make a difference. Because people, they move. And after decades, sometimes people decide to talk. We begin this season in 2012 with the life and the death of a man named Travis Smith. He grew up in territory familiar for longtime listeners of our podcast, the border of Georgia and South Carolina. Many of you already know that Augusta is a city that sits across 2 states. Augusta belongs to Georgia and North Augusta to South Carolina. We've covered this area of the Southeast many times before. In all honesty, there are enough cases in this small region that we could keep going for years and still not manage to feature everyone. If we just mention the people that we featured on our show, within a 2-hour radius of Augusta, there are so many names. The open missing person cases of the Millbrook twins, and Aaliyah Bell, Kimberly Boyd, Sarah Boyd, Linda McCord, all 3 of whom disappeared on their way home from a church revival. There's the disappearance and murder of Tiffany Nelson, the murders of Malakia Logan and Shakima Cabbage Stalk, Moses Williams, and Larry Sanders Jr. There are the Aiken County Jane Does, and there are so many others, just outside that range. Travis Smith lived very close to the Millbrook twins, to Tiffany Nelson, to Moses Williams and Larry Sanders, and to the area where the Aiken Does were found. And his case has overlapped with some of these cold cases in ways beyond geography. When we first began researching Travis Smith's case, we found his sister, Taisha, quoted in an article featuring the families of both Moses Williams and Larry Sanders Jr. Larry and Moses's mothers and Taisha had gathered time and time again to try and garner attention for their loved ones' cases. Every article featured more family members who had joined their ranks, a club that no one wanted to belong to. They were focused on unsolved gun violence in the North Augusta and Aiken areas. They hoped to draw attention to the number of cases growing cold running the border of Georgia and South Carolina. We hope that resolution will come for them. Just this year, we've seen more identifications of Doe victims and arrests in homicide cases featured on our show than in the past 6 years combined. We have faith that missing people will be located or recovered, and identifications will come, and murderers found. As for Travis Smith, he has his sister, Taisha Simmons, in his corner, and for 11 years, she hasn't given up. She doesn't plan to. The cold cases along the border of Georgia and South Carolina are overseen by many agencies. state bureaus, sheriff's offices, offices of public safety, police departments. The lines between a large department and a small office might be separated at the state line, or a county, or run through an unincorporated neighborhood. Augusta, Georgia, is overseen by the Richmond County Sheriff's Office, at least since it absorbed the smaller Augusta Police Department. That is a large force. Aiken, a town only 30 minutes away in South Carolina, has its own public safety office, and Aiken County its own sheriff's office. North Augusta sits in Aiken County, but within its city limits, has its own separate Office of Public Safety. That office has oversight over North Augusta. That was a lot of jurisdiction talk, we know, but it matters because of resources and how many detectives or investigators are available to work any given case, and who is assigned a case and why. And when there are a number of cold cases in an area, as well as ongoing investigations, this becomes a real concern. If you've listened to our show for a while, then you've probably heard us discuss caseload before. Relatively few departments have a dedicated cold case squad, and when there are a high number of active investigations in process, resources can be stretched thin. WRDW, an Augusta area news station, reported in April of 2023 that in just the last year, there had been at least 80 murders in what they call the CSRA. That stands for the Central Savannah River Area. Augusta University explains that region, quote, includes 13 counties in the state of Georgia and 5 counties in South Carolina, and that the Savannah River is the border between the two states. This information is a reason why another recent headline from WRDW caught our eyes. When we read that, quote, new cold case unit promises closure for some CSRA families, we were excited, because that region could include many of the cases that we listed at the top of the episode. We thought at first that it might even apply to the story that we're telling you in these episodes. But then we read on and we saw this, that the funding stops at the state line. Not for any lack of interest in cold cases in South Carolina, but simply that it's a Georgia program. According to WRDW, this unit, quote, was established under a new Georgia law that took effect July 1st and allows the GBI to investigate any unsolved homicide or murder occurring after January 1st, 1970 and more than 3 years old, end quote. Now, that's provided the GBI was involved or is invited to be involved in the case. As WRDW explained, the funding offered by the bill, $5.4 million, will be a game changer for cold cases in the CSRA and beyond. But the cases of Moses Williams, Larry Sanders Jr., and Travis Smith, they're just over that state boundary. Just so you can imagine how close that line is, Travis Smith in North Augusta, he was murdered a little under 9 miles from downtown Augusta, Georgia. It would have taken him about 19 minutes to drive there and less time to cross the state line from one Augusta to another. North Augusta is not a large city. It's home to around 23,000 people as of 2020. It's in Aiken County and not in Richmond. And compared to some other places in Georgia and South Carolina, it's a comparatively quiet place to live. According to what law enforcement told the Augusta Chronicle in 2012, there were 2 murders in the city between 2009 and 2012. That number may have been tallied before the end of the year because we saw FBI statistics stating that there were actually 2 murders in North Augusta in 2012 alone. But for comparison, Aiken, the city, not the county, had higher rates. At about 31,000 residents, Aiken saw 4 homicides in 2012. There is crime in North Augusta. We saw reports updated at the time of this recording, but it is largely property-related, with relatively few violent incidents. The same could be said, authorities told the Augusta Chronicle, for the Ridgeview Manor apartment complex back in 2012. The complex has since rebranded, but for the purposes of this episode, and since everyone calls it Ridgeview, we'll do so as well. Law enforcement told the paper that, quote, the apartment complex has its share of criminal activity, but no one there was expecting a homicide. Ridgeview Manor was where Travis Smith was hanging out with his friends in the early morning hours of September 29th, 2012. Ridgeview is an 88-unit complex on Bradleyville Road in North Augusta. While Travis did not live at Ridgeview Manor, he was a frequent visitor. According to his family, so many of his friends did reside there that he was always stopping by to see this person or that. His favorite pastime was basketball, and according to the friends we spoke with, he'd play a pickup game with anyone, including the teenage boys who were still learning, and he actually helped them improve. Some of those same kids viewed Travis as a mentor figure and came to him with their problems, relationship issues, school problems, or even advice about going to college. Travis was a laid-back and funny guy. That's what his sister Taisha told us. He was approachable. And, as everyone we talked to said, everyone, there was no one who had issues with Travis. That's why the events of September 29th were so shocking. That and the fact that Travis Smith was murdered by apparent strangers, or at least they seemed to be. There was no confrontation or argument. At around 2:45 a.m., Travis was standing in an apartment breezeway speaking with an acquaintance. That's when, according to the Post and Courier, quote, 2 men approached, fatally shooting him. The Augusta Chronicle added that these 2 men were described as, quote, dressed in hoodies. In 2016, Taisha, Travis's sister, told the Aiken Standard that, quote, police told us that they, the victims, were approached by 2 men wearing hoodies that were tightened up around their faces so that they couldn't see who they were. So, there was no clear descriptions for witnesses to offer, and Travis, shot once in the abdomen, would be dead by the time that emergency services arrived. The shooters were gone, and his family was left to try and unpack the mystery of why he'd been targeted, if he'd been targeted at all. We do have more to tell you about those moments and the details of the crime. But first, we want you to hear more about Travis, and from his friends, and most especially from his sister, Taisha. She took on the role of his case advocate within days of his shooting, at a time where she had been preparing for her own wedding. And Taisha hasn't stopped since then. She described her brother as quiet but friendly, with a dry, sarcastic sense of humor that made him popular with his peers. She said they'd grown up happily in the area, and that Travis hadn't had any major issues. Nothing that could have prepared her for what happened in 2012 when her brother was just 28 years old. As his big sister, she'd watched him grow up. She thought she'd have a lot more time.
So I was 7 years older than Travis. Travis was the youngest. Travis was 28 when he died. Yes, I remember him being born. He was the cutest little baby, but he was a crybaby. He was a colicky baby. So when Mama got him home, he would cry a lot because, he was colicky. But he was the cutest little baby. He had the prettiest smile.
While their mother worked, Taisha and her siblings would stay at their grandmother's house. She helped keep an eye on her siblings, but she also got to enjoy playing with them too. A big part of that was the chance to get out and explore their neighborhood.
We grew up in North Augusta, South Carolina. We grew up in a close-knit community called Bradleyville. We looked out for one another. All the kids played together. I have 2 siblings. My mom she had a total of 3 kids. I'm the oldest, and we have a middle brother. His name is Brandon. And, we were all close to our cousins, and we all played together. We had a good childhood, just memories from playing outside and going to church and just things like that. We really had a good childhood. A lot of the people who in the neighborhood who formed bonds as kids are now still friends up into their adulthood. So that's how close the bonds were in the neighborhood. It was a little neighborhood store that we had. It was called Jack Smith's Grocery Store, and it was like just a little neighborhood store that a man ran, and he had a little storage building in his house, and it was like our neighborhood grocery store. He would have candy and popsicles and sodas. We'd take our change up there, and we would buy like little treats and stuff, and we would just walk around the neighborhood together. We weren't like rich or anything like that, but the time we had, we had good memories with family, just laughing and playing. It really made our childhoods fun. We were surrounded by a lot of love in our neighborhood. Our cousins were over here almost every day. We played outside, we played games, watched TV, played outside almost all day from sun up to sundown. We had a lot of kids in our neighborhood, so we would play with them. We would ride bikes. We just do all kinds of stuff, play basketball. So we had a basketball court that people would play on, that our neighbor up the road had a basketball court behind his house. So we come from a basketball family. Like some of my cousins play basketball, they coach. Our aunt, who's gone, passed away, she was big into basketball. My mom loves basketball. So that's what we did a lot of growing up in the house. We would eat our Sunday dinner, get our plate, sit around the TV, and just watch the game. That was one thing our family liked to do together. We liked to sit in the living room. We liked to talk and watch basketball, talk basketball, watch different players. And like in front of our house, we had a basketball court that's still here to this day. It's still here, and it still has a net, and people still play on it. Some of the kids, but the whole neighborhood would flock down to that basketball court and shoot basketball out here. And another thing that we would like to watch, too, growing up was a lot of music videos. MTV and BET was, like, big in our house. Kind of brought our family together because that's something that both our family loves, music and sports. So that was always, like, a centerpiece of conversation or a centerpiece where we would have fun dancing or listening to music in the house, watching sports, watching TV shows.
Although Travis is consistently described as quiet, Taisha told us that his personality came out most when he discussed the things that he loved: basketball, especially the Lakers, and music.
Like I said, we grew up in church, so church was a big part of from like the younger years all the way up to the teenage years. He would sing on the church choir, and he loved to sing, even though he couldn't sing well. Anything pertaining to music, he loved. And he would just go be around the house sometimes just singing because he loved to sing, he loved music. He liked a lot of R&B music. He loved like a lot of R&B artists. He was really big into R&B. And he liked a lot of gospel music too, though. But he really was a big fan of R&B. He would try to sing, and he loved Michael Jackson. It was the Michael Jackson anniversary special, and we would watch that thing at my house like over and over because he stayed with me for a short period of time when he went to high school. When I stayed in Clearwater, he transferred and was staying with me for a little while he went to school in Midland Valley. And we would watch that over and over because we loved that special. He loved dancing too. Matter of fact, a good memory that made me laugh, that Michael Jackson Moonwalker game that came out on the Wii. He loved that game, and he was so good at that game.
Taisha told us that Travis was known to be easygoing and thoughtful, slow to offer his opinion, and even-tempered. Not the kind of person, in short, to have a lot of conflict in his life.
He could be shy at times until he got to know you. Then he would open up more, but then he had a good sense of humor. He was very sarcastic. He was kind of clown. He was like, he could be clownish sometimes. He always made you laugh. He was just a good person to be around. He never caused any trouble. He was well liked by everybody. Like, he was always this positive energy. He was friends with like a lot of different people in school. He could blend in any crowd.
One of Travis's close friends, James Griffin, told news channel WJBF that Travis was a very private person. Perhaps it wasn't so strange then that his family was totally taken by surprise when, at almost 19 years old, he gave them some news that they weren't expecting.
So we were kind of shocked when we found out that he was going to be a father, but he embraced it, and he spent a lot of time with his daughter when she was younger, and, he was excited.
Taisha told us that, like Travis himself, his daughter was an April baby. She was born just before he turned 19 years old. We saw a picture of him in a basketball jersey, cradling her as a newborn.
She is the splitting image of him. She has like his whole face. I mean, if you look at a picture of her and you look at him, they look identical. They look that much alike. Just looking at her, it kind of makes you sad because she reminds you of him, but then at the same time you're happy because we still have that part of him.
According to Taisha, Travis and his daughter had varying levels of contact over the next few years. When he was killed in 2012, she was only 9 years old.
He didn't get to see her for a good period of time. And it was just right before their bond was becoming closer and they were building a good relationship. Like, that's another sad thing because right before he passed, they were getting their relationship back together, and they were getting close, and they were talking on the phone every day. She didn't get a chance to make up for the lost time that she lost with her dad.
What was Travis's life like in 2012? It's something Taisha knows less about than she'd like. She thinks that if she'd had more information, it might be easier to pick apart the mystery of his death. But at the time, she was caught up in the bustle of work and family and wedding planning, and Travis had his friends and his own social life and also his own responsibilities. He did lawn maintenance work, and he was preparing to return to school to further his education. And Travis had family responsibilities as well. Their maternal grandmother, who'd taken such a major role in raising them, had developed dementia. According to Taisha, he'd taken an active role in her care. When their mother was at work, he'd often help get her meals, keep an eye on her, and help her with everyday activities. An important caretaking role that was hard to fill after Travis's death. Outside of that, though, and Travis's visits to see his nieces and nephews, Taisha didn't have a sense of the daily rhythm of his life that she once had. That was largely due to her own relocation. Taisha had moved, not far, but to Aiken, so she didn't know his friends as well as she wished. Later, she had to spend time tracking them down to see what they might know.
So it kind of like a little bit of separation there because, I had kids and I was in a relationship. So I kind of had my own little thing going at that time. So I wasn't as close as I was before because I wasn't in North Augusta anymore. But like I said, we always had a close-knit bond.
Taisha knows them now, though, and she was able to connect us so that we could learn a little more about Travis. One of those friends is Walter, who spoke with us for this series. He was one of the teenagers who regularly played basketball with Travis and looked up to him as a mentor. In 2012, Walter was still figuring out a lot, he said, and Travis was there to listen.
He was just like that. He was just like that, a real big brother. Give you confidence. If you right, you right. If you wrong, you wrong. Always made you look at the bigger picture in life. Just always made sure you stayed on the straight and narrow. Treated people with respect. Treat everybody the same, no matter the predicament or the situation of the person. So I always love my brother for that. He'll give you a shirt off his back. It was a blessing being around him all the time. We was at the gym playing basketball one day, and this was before I was going to school, actually. And he was like, don't care about what nobody say. Do what you got to do to progress in your life and make things happen. And he was like, you already know the family behind you 110%. That was the last time I seen him and talked to him.
Did he play a part in you deciding to go to school?
Most definitely. He was one of the people that I always went to for guidance and just anything in general.
And for some of the teenagers who play basketball, Travis offered more than just advice. He actively kept them out of trouble. We spoke to Gerard, another friend of Travis, who said that he'd known Travis for years and had spent countless hours with him on the basketball court. But Travis had helped him with more than just playing ball.
I think I met Travis when I was like maybe 10. I wasn't really close to my family like that, so I had the street was like my family, and Travis was like part of it. He's like one of like the OGs that kind of watched over the young bucks when we were young. So I probably was like 10 or 11. Like me, like I was never close to my family. Like, I wasn't close to my mom. Like my mom was a mom, but she wasn't the best at teaching me of a lot of stuff from growing up. I would have like a lot of anger, so I would always want to fight, always want to like bully somebody, something like that. So it's just like every now and then when I would do stuff to get attention, he would put me to the side like, hey man, this ain't it, you know what I'm saying? If somebody bothers you, I got your back, but it's like you can't be out here trying to bully people and start stuff, you know what I'm saying? It's not a good look. So he would help me do stuff like that. You know what I mean? He was older than me, so he knew about the way to live life. Definitely living in the hood. He was like the father to us, you know what I'm saying? So when he'd come over there, we'll play video games, we'll play basketball, and I wasn't even good at basketball, so I would still play. We would chop it up and talk about life. We'll go out to the park or something and just kick it, this dude stuff the right way. He was very good at basketball. Like, what? He was a big Kobe fan. You couldn't tell him nothing. You could not tell him nothing about the Lakers. Definitely Kobe. Kobe is better than anybody.
We're not trying to paint a picture of Travis as perfect, but it really seems, based not only on what his friends and family say, but on the later investigation, that he had no serious issues in his life. He was kind, easygoing, and cared for his family. But we never know everything about everyone. We all have our troubles. That's something that our colleague, Renetta DeBose at WJBF, has wondered about. She covered Travis's case last year, at the 10-year anniversary of his murder. Our ongoing media partnership with her is actually how Taisha heard about the podcast. Renetta heard the same good things about Travis that we did, but she did find out one thing that might have been important, something that she told us about in an interview.
I'll preface it by saying that, yes, Travis was really quiet. He kept to himself. He had his core group of friends. He wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't anyone who had a record or, a troublemaker or anything like that. He would just kind of hang out with his friends and, play video games and such. Nothing major. Well, one thing that really stood out, and I find this often with cases that I cover, with murder cases or missing persons cases, there's only so much you know about a person, right? There are things that sometimes we keep to ourselves. And so there was something going on that Travis didn't tell anybody about. And I don't know what it was. Nobody understands what it could have been, but there was something that was going on that something spooked him.
And what was that something? No one's quite sure. That night, Travis was spending time with a new acquaintance, a woman he seemed to have recently met, according to his friends, and also with other people that he knew. According to the fulfillment of our Freedom of Information Act filing, or FOIA, that we received from the North Augusta Department of Public Safety, the apartment was on a lower level in a southwest corner. According to police records, 2 adult women and 1 child resided there. On the night of September 28th and the early morning of September 29th, Travis was spending time with one of these women, along with some of his friends who regularly joined him at Ridgeview. According to multiple news reports, he was moving back and forth between the apartment and a nearby breezeway throughout the night. Things seemed quiet, but maybe not quite normal. There may have been something a little off with Travis. Desmond Wilson, one of Travis's best friends, spoke with WJBF about that night. Desmond explained that while normally laid back, at one point, Travis was, quote, pacing, and that his demeanor, quote, seemed odd. Nothing so serious that Desmond was deeply concerned. But there was one other thing. When Desmond checked his social media, he noticed something that Travis had posted on Twitter. Both Desmond and Travis's friend James noticed the tweets. As Desmond described to WJBF, quote, he was like, something just don't feel right. And I was like, asked him what's wrong, and he was like, nothing. We tried to track down Travis's Twitter account on our own. It was not mentioned in the FOIA, and we weren't able to independently find the account. As you can guess, there are a lot of Travis Smiths on Twitter. Luckily, Desmond Wilson, his friend, weighed in to help us out. He has saved a lot of things since the time of Travis's shooting. When we spoke to Desmond over direct message, he was able to direct us to Travis's account and to the specific tweets from that night. There are actually a series of them, all from 9/29/12, so posted after 12 a.m. Based on what Travis wrote, Desmond's assessment in his comments to Renetta seemed correct to us. Something was definitely bothering Travis. We're going to omit for explicit language here, but these excerpts can give you the basic feel. Travis actually tweeted 6 times in a row in pretty close succession. Some of his comments were as follows. That something, quote, just ain't right, and that something, quote, ain't on point. There are several more tweets in that same vein. The last tweet from that evening reads, quote, Lil do they know. Desmond tells us that that's the last communication that he ever saw from his friend. Since Travis's account was public, law enforcement does have access to these tweets and can also review who Travis was following and his followers. We asked Desmond if he'd thought any more about what those tweets meant beyond what he told Renetta last year. He told us via direct message that he thought there may have been a conflict concerning Travis's new female acquaintance, but that he really had no idea. That was just a guess, because it was the only new denominator in his friend's life. Desmond says that Travis was so intensely private that he'd never even heard of this new female friend until that evening. One thing that Desmond noted, though, was that when he decided to leave that particular area of the apartments, Travis said that he wasn't coming with him, which Desmond found odd. Desmond tells us that, as Travis's best friend, that was normally how they did things. They'd always leave a party together. But that night, Travis decided to stay. At the time, Desmond said that he wasn't overly worried. He told WJBF in regard to Travis's tweets, quote, "Whatever it was, I don't think that he thought it was that serious." And Desmond might have been right, but Travis never got the chance to tell his friends either way. Per WJBF, Travis had stayed at the complex later than he usually did, probably because he was chatting with his new acquaintance, the woman who lived in the apartment on the lower floor. And it was in the early hours of the morning, September 29th, 2012, that those men with the guns approached them. And that scene has haunted Desmond, who isn't just a best friend of Travis Smith. He's also cousin to Moses Williams, who was featured on our show in 2022. Desmond actually sent us a picture of their Pee Wee football team, with them posed next to one another. Moses Williams was murdered in February of 2012, so Travis was the second person that Desmond lost in less than a year. And as for Taisha, she was at home in Aiken, asleep, when her phone rang.
Well, my aunt, who's now passed on, she called me like between 3 and 4 in the morning. And that's what she told me. She was like, "You need to come over here." I was like, "Why? What happened?" At first she didn't want to tell me. She's like, "You need to get over here." I asked her again, "What happened?" She's like, "Someone killed Travis." And I couldn't say anything because I was just floored. I was just like, "What do you mean somebody killed Travis?" And I just remember just letting out a big scream, big cry.
Next time on The Fall Line, we dive into what's known about the sudden attack on Travis, the immediate aftermath of the apartment complex, and the investigation into his murder, and what Taisha has done since to try and find her brother's killers. If you have any information regarding the murder of Travis Smith, please call North Augusta Public Safety at 803-279-2121. If you know of a case that should be featured on The Fall Line, there's a link to our case submission form in the show notes. And thank you for listening. The Fall Line is an independent show, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA, pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. If you try out the products that we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And please take a moment to rate and review our show in your podcast app of choice. And if you're interested in pre-ordering my book, which covers years in my life working on a Jane Doe case and explores the world of forensic scientists who resolve unidentified persons cases, you can find that link in our show notes. The book is called Lay Them to Rest, and it's out this October. Pre-ordering the book is a big factor in its success, so I really appreciate it. We'll be sharing some exclusive previews on the feed very soon, and if you pre-order your book through Hachette, there will soon be opportunities to gain access to exclusive bonus material like a full-length podcast episode covering a cold case briefly touched on in the book, a Zoom hangout with a special guest, and much more. We'll keep you updated. If you'd like to support The Fall Line and the stories we cover, you can join us on Patreon or Apple Premium. 100% of our Patreon and Apple Premium earnings go toward the Family Therapy Fund and charitable donation. In the past, the remainder has gone toward the Millbrook Twins billboard rent. Their increased reward fund expires in August of 2023. Half of that money will go toward long-term billboard funding, so we will no longer need to pay that monthly fee. So we'll put that money toward offering more therapy to any family members who are interested. If there is excess, we'll donate each month to one of the family fundraisers. For example, Leon Laurelis' Attorney Fund or the MMIP organization started by Matthew Grant's aunt. Each month, we'll post that donation on our Patreon blog so you can see where the funds are going. The Fall Line is written, hosted, and researched by Laura Norton, with additional research by Brian Waters, Kiana Burgess, and Michaela Morrill. Interviews by Brooke Hargrove. Produced, engineered, and scored by Maura Curry. Content advisement by Brandy C. Williams, Liv Fallon, and Vic Kennedy. And, as always, our most special thanks to Liz Lipka and Sarah Turney. As of November 2022, our monthly charitable donation is going to Season of Justice to support family grant initiatives. Since 2020, Season of Justice has raised more than $1 million in grants for more than 140 cases in North America, leading to 6 cold cases being solved. But Season of Justice doesn't do this alone, so we ask you to consider donating this month. This month, you can join us in supporting Season of Justice. In order to support our collaboration with Moms and Mysteries, you can share our social media posts regarding the campaign. You can join us today in supporting Season of Justice with a donation by visiting GiveButter, that's GIVEBUTTER.com/fallmoms, FALLMOMS, or you can text FALLSOJ, Fall SOJ, to 53555. This nonprofit is very personal to us. Let us explain why. So far, 5 families featured on our show have had their awareness campaign grants funded through Season of Justice, including billboards and similar campaigns for Chido Garibay, Leon Laurelis, Jackie Nguyen and Nut Fan, Janice Becky LaPlante, and Matthew Grant. If you are a family member who is interested in applying for an awareness campaign, you can find a link in our show notes. And remember, if you live in an area that doesn't have billboards or where they might not be effective, there are lots of options. Bus ads, radio commercials, yard signs, newspaper features, there's a lot out there. If you need help filling out the application, we will help you. Just get in touch on social media or by email, and we will personally walk you through the process. We won't normally be this long-winded at the end of every episode, but we're passionate about this nonprofit. We have seen more families helped in the past year than we could possibly manage on our own. We know how hard it is to raise this kind of money, and we want you to be aware that this resource is available. So seriously, if you don't know where to start, let us know. We're here.